Hello and welcome back to Life in Bold. My name is Ben Hawes and I am your host today. Well, I'm your host every day because I'm the host of Life in Bold, but I'm very excited about this episode. I kind of just want to get into it, but I'll tell you who it is before we do so. Today's guest is Bryetta Calloway, and I shouldn't even say guest, I should say like expert or thinker or thought provoker, because Bryetta always makes me think. She always makes me reflect. We know each other because of our work at Life Labs Learning, which is where I currently work and where she used to work. She led our marketing team and just shared so many cool lessons all the time about messaging and branding and like personal branding, which really went deeper into like understanding who you are and understanding how to talk about it, tell your story. And I have always admired her. She's such a great thinker. And I had her on the podcast today to talk about the topic of finding peace. Something that we don't always take a second to think about is how are we actually working to find peace in our lives? Because we all have competing priorities, competing tasks, competing responsibilities. We also all have like deep insecurities and sometimes traumas that we're working through that can disturb our peace. And so this conversation really gets to the bottom of how the two of us have dealt with finding peace in life and like different aspects of it. I think it was a really cool conversation. So let's get into it. This is Bryetta Calloway. Enjoy. How do I look?
You look amazing.
I actually got a haircut yesterday.
It looks good.
I went to like a salon. I've been going to like a regular barber shop.
Yeah.
But I went to this influencer that I follow, posted that he went to this woman for a haircut, and I was like, oh, I have to go.
Did you love the experience?
I loved it.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
It was so good.
Yeah, because it's like going to a salon is a very different thing. Like you have to like the end result, but you have to also like the process and the environment and all of that. Okay, that's good.
Totally. Okay, everybody, we have Bryetta Calloway here to talk about all things Life in Bold.
I love being here. You know that anytime I have the chance to talk with you, I'm super excited.
Yeah, I was so excited to have the chance to interview you again, to chat with you. And when I was thinking about topics for what do I want to talk to Bryetta about, there's so much that we could talk about because as the listeners might know from the last episode that you were on, we worked together at where I currently work, which is Life Labs, and you have moved on. But you taught us so much about branding and marketing and messaging and like, and on a deeper level, just like being who you are and being able to communicate who you are. And so that's why I was initially really attracted to having you on the show. Since then, I think I've really been like paying attention to your Instagram and your TikTok. And one of the things that I always am attracted to with your stuff is how peaceful like your posts can be. I notice like on a Friday night, you'll post something. I'm in my apartment. I just lit a candle. I'm, watching a movie or reading a book or listening to music. And like I have, achieved this like peaceful night. And so what I'm excited to chat about is like generally like peace in life, because in Life in Bold, we talk so much about action and going after things and finding yourself and everything like that. But some of it has to be restful and you have to slow down sometimes as well. So I'm curious to learn from you.
No, I love this topic because I think for people like myself, and I think people like you, and probably a lot of the people who listen to your podcast, you can become addicted to the idea of action and accomplishing things, especially if you're a dreamer and you have big dreams for yourself and you have big goals for yourself. You're seduced by the idea of doing lots of things, and that's not going to change, right? Like that's sort of like a core tenet of who I am. And yet I also know that finding peace is really important for recalibration, right? To be able to sustain the life that you're building, the dream that you're going after, you need moments of peace. But one of the things that I've really been on a journey of is being able to sustain those moments of peace, that I don't want there to be so many peaks and valleys in how I'm experiencing my life, and like finding rituals and ways to have peace be a very consistent part of my life is something that I think is really important, because life is really fast and like there's lots of things going on all the time. And I think you have to be really deliberate about carving out space for yourself to like be still, retreat, recalibrate, all of those things.
Yeah. No, I really love that because similarly am such a hustler and I'm always trying to make something happen, always trying to sell something, like
Yep,
always
yep,
trying to make a plan for brunch or for drinks or
yep.
whatever. I think with my social life, I'm constantly obsessed with like, how can I get more friends? How can I get more plans on my calendar?
Hmm.
And, I think with peace, it's so funny because the moments of peace, the night where you light a candle and you take a
Yep,
bath, like that's the peace. But
yep.
in reality, being at peace with your life is a
Hmm.
really interesting thing as well. So if your job is extremely stressful and you never get time to yourself, and then one night a month you get time to take a bath and read a book and light a candle, are you really at peace?
Mm.
Or are you just, is that a band aid?
Yeah, and what I love about what you said is because I think the key is understanding what at peace
Hmm.
means for you as an individual, right? Because not everyone experiences life at the same cadence and pace,
Hmm.
right? Like there are people who just consume life faster, brighter, bolder than other people. And then there are other people who experience life at a slower pace, and it doesn't necessarily mean that one is more at peace than
Yeah.
the other, right? So it is really this idea about coming to a place of acceptance about how you're experiencing your life. And if you are in any ways experiencing friction or conflict about how you're experiencing your life, then that means you are not at peace with how you're experiencing your life. And your responsibility as a steward of your own human experience
Hmm.
is to figure out what to do to address that, right? So I know people who live what you would sort of on the surface say are very peaceful lives, right?
Hmm.
Like they're not living in a big city, they have their gardens, they sort of have a routine to their life. They're doing the same thing on Tuesday every single week. They're experiencing life in ways that you would feel are peaceful, and yet they are not at peace with what their life is. And so to
Mm.
be at peace, it might actually mean picking up the cadence. It might mean like, oh, I actually need to go hustle and like go do that thing that I've been dreaming of doing for 15 years, because
Mhm,
while it might create more activity in my life holistically, I will be more at peace
mhm,
with the way I'm experiencing my life. So I always go back to this. It really is about knowing yourself, right? Like that's always the big first work. Like know yourself, and
mhm,
then from there you can start to understand, well, what is it that I need in order for me to feel a sustained sense of acceptance
mhm.
about who I am and how I'm experiencing the world.
Yeah, it reminds me of this journey that I've been on that before I turned 30, between the year 29 and 30, I put myself on what I was calling my journey to 30. And
Hmm.
I started therapy and I was doing some life coaching and I was doing all these different things. And my goal was really, and now that I think about it in this context, to feel at peace with my
Yeah.
life.
Yeah.
And when on the day that I turned 30, I didn't want to be full of regrets. I didn't want to be
Yep.
full of insecurities. I wanted to feel good about myself.
Yeah.
And I learned so much on that journey. And there's actually a moment that if I have to put a before and after in my life,
Yeah.
my 30th birthday was a great day. I actually went and bought a new guitar because I was in Nashville and I was just really feeling the vibe. And I
Hmm.
was like, I think that I need a new guitar for my 30s. And
Hmm.
then my friend that same day set me up with an energy work session
Hmm.
with Kim at a place called the Happy Hour.
Okay.
And this session was an hour and a half. And essentially, this woman, Kim, listened to me for an hour talk just about what I'm looking for in life and what I want to do, kind of like a life coaching session. But then at the 1 hour mark, we got up onto like a massage table kind of thing. And she just like calmed my energy down. And like
Yep.
her kind of skill is that she can pick up on images based on your energy is like
Mhm.
what that's what she says she can do. And like I decided when I was going into it, I was like, I'm not gonna like care if I believe it or not. I'm just gonna
Yep.
like have the conversations and like
Yep.
see what comes of it and see how I react to it. And when she sat me back down after sitting at the table, she said, "Do you want to know what I saw?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "So you're a performer
Hmm.
and you are a performer. So you
Yeah.
basically the way that I took that was like I need to own that and like
Yeah.
regardless of however I move forward in my identity as a performer, I need to identify as a
Yeah.
performer." And ever since then, that was last summer. We're coming up on some summer again. It's March. And I have been really pursuing and putting myself out there as a performer.
Hmm.
And it has brought me the most peace, even
Yeah.
though it has been the most active, the most at risk I have been.
Yep.
I have been meeting people all the time and literally going on stage and putting myself up for judgment.
Yeah.
And to a lot of people, that would not bring them peace. But I feel so satisfied and so happy with the fact that I'm allowing myself to do that after 8 years of living in New York. I came
Hmm.
here to do that
Yep.
and I'm finally doing it. And that brings me so much peace.
Yeah. I love so much of what you said because I think the first thing is like, you know, no matter what your sort of like spiritual or religious leanings
Mm,
are, almost every single religion has some sort of space for the act of stillness, meditation, like prayer,
hmm
centering, like all humans are looking for how do I, build in that as a practice, right?
hmm
So, however you do it is really up to the individual. But one of the things that I learned, like 15 years ago, I had a friend who started doing yoga, and this was like before yoga was really mainstream.
hmm
And we were on this like health journey together, and I wanted him to be my accountability buddy. I was like, listen, if you call me in the morning to go to the gym, I will go to the gym. And so we started doing that, and then he started really getting into yoga, and he was like, well, Brietta, just come to yoga. And I could not ever wrap my mind around yoga. It was so painful for me because I couldn't do the stillness.
hmm
Like it was uncomfortably painful for me because I was all about like high impact, high aerobic, like that's what I wanted to do because I didn't want to have to sit in the thinking of the exercise. I was like, I just want to get in, get it done, and like move on. Well, that is sort of symbolic of like how I was also living my life, right?
Yeah, no, totally.
Like I was just like, I just want to get in, get it done. Please don't like force me to slow down enough to actually experience the discomfort of
hmm
what I'm experiencing. And that's what stillness does,
hmm
which is what I'm doing when you see those posts when I'm like lighting the candle and the music. And I really have a practice now where I actually ask myself, wait, what am I feeling right now? Like slow down just enough to say like, I feel like I'm aggravated and I don't know why.
hmm
So like now it's time to like reverse engineer. Like what was it today? And when you really sit with that practice, you're like, "Oh, that it was that conversation earlier today. That person really hurt my feelings. But because I was doing a million things, I didn't have time to stop." And
hmm
I'm always fascinated by the human brain that we can compartmentalize in that way. So my brain was just like, "Don't have time to
hmm
process that. Let's just keep moving." But the act of like honoring stillness and saying like, oh, I was really hurt by that conversation, or like, oh, I really was like firing on all cylinders today. I made a lot of big decisions today and my brain is really tired, or like I'm afraid did I make right decisions today,
hmm
like whatever that is. It's my attempt um to create enough space that my brain can actually rest and my body can rest. And I actually heard someone give this definition years ago, and I don't know how much of it I agree with, but the sentiment I think is really important. And they were basically saying that someone who protects their peace is someone who declares war against anything that comes up against their peace,
hmm
right? Like, so it's this idea of like, I know what I need to feel safe and secure and in my body and like in my right mind and like focused on all the beautiful things in my life. And if there's anything that's challenging that, then I have to address it,
hmm
right? So if it's like, I'm not spending enough time with friends and family, I'm feeling disconnected and isolated, whatever's in the way of that, like I have to address it, right?
hmm
Like if I'm feeling like disconnected from my dreams. Like I had this big dream of something I want to do. What is it that I need to put in place in order to do that? And so for me, it's helped me because again, I'm an action oriented person. So it helps me to be like, okay, what can I do
Hmm.
to create enough space for myself that I can feel more at peace, more peaceful. And then I think my ultimate goal is that I want to be a catalyst for peace for other people.
Hmm.
I don't want to be someone who brings chaos into the lives of others because I've seen the effects of chaos and I don't want to ever like bring that to other people.
Yeah.
So again, you can't bring something that you're not experiencing. So my responsibility is like experience it first, know how to create and hold that for myself, and then hopefully that spills over to other people.
Yeah. Absolutely. I'm curious in your own life, what gets in the way of your peace?
I would say most consistently what gets in the way of my peace is busyness,
Mm.
but and I'm going to say that as the act of busyness, but busyness is really my own sort of internal sense of responsibility. Like I'm someone who feels incredibly responsible for everything that's around me.
Hmm.
As a manager, I feel incredibly responsible for my team,
Hmm.
my deliverables, my metrics. As a partner, I feel incredibly responsible for the experiences of people who are in partnership with me. I'm
Hmm.
the oldest child in my family, so I feel incredibly responsible for my siblings and
Yeah.
my parent. Like I am someone who carries, no one put it on me. This is all self-inflicted, but I carry a lot of responsibility and that means I'm doing a
Mm.
lot. And so one of the things, and I also, and this is one of the things I've worked on in therapy is like I was someone who felt like carving out space for myself was selfish,
Mm.
right? Like, and I never, and that's the one thing I hate. Like, I hate selfishness, and
Hmm.
so I never want to be a selfish person. And so for me, I felt like, well, it's really selfish if I don't answer that phone call because that person might need me. And if they need me, I have to answer
Mm.
because who else are they going to call, right? So I would like stop everything I'm doing. I would be on the phone for hours solving people's problems, like making the phone call for them, like doing all the things. And it really stopped me from being able to experience peace because I never stopped long enough to actually say like, "Oh, what is it that you need right now?" And so that's really one of the big things I think that's gotten in the way of peace. And then the other thing was that I didn't have any like consistent rituals or
Mm.
practices that help me tap into like a more peaceful state. So now I'm very into my gardening. Like anyone who knows me, like I'm still a city girl, so like there's no backyard. There's no backyard, but like my balcony is filled with like all of my little sproutlings and all of my little plant like those rituals of like
Hmm.
watering the plants and like taking care of them, it really helps me very quickly to tap into a slower, more like intentional space.
Hmm.
And the thing that I think more people need to give themselves permission for, especially people who are living big bold lives, is that it's not a luxury, it's a necessity. Like you cannot sustain a big
Mm.
life without actually building in practices that provide you rest and
Yeah.
peace. You can't sustain it. And I think you know this as well as I do. Anyone who's worked in any sort of spaces that are high growth, high fast pace, if you're working in any industries that are performance based, it's really necessary that you're
Hmm.
intentional about disconnecting and like closing. I can't tell you how many people I say, close your laptop, like
Yeah.
really close it and don't open it until Monday. like it's okay. Like
Yeah.
very few of us are like solving world hunger and like all of those things. Like it can wait. Like
Hmm.
these things are not frivolous. They're not selfish. They're actually necessary for you to fire on all cylinders when you
Hmm.
need to.
That makes me really, really curious about what you did or what you learned or what you came across in order to get from a place where you felt like being selfish was bad or taking time for yourself was selfish
Mhm.
to a place where you understand that now it's not only it's necessary and it might even be selfless to
Yeah.
take time for yourself.
Well, I think the path there was a little circuitous in the sense
Mm,
of I remember that I would experience people who I really thought were selfish, right? I would be like, oh, that person called them and they didn't help. And that is so selfish. Like, you should help other people.
mhm,
And I would really complain about it. I would be like, "Ugh, how come this person isn't like helping this other person?" And I remember my therapist said, well, they were like, well, why do you believe that people have to answer the phone every single time someone calls, or they have to stop everything they're doing? Or I mean, I was a person that if people in my circle needed me, I'll drop everything, I'll fly across the country. If you need me, I will stay up late on the phone, like I will do the things.
mhm,
And I what got me to a place of understanding that was understanding, oh, that's not what selfish is. Like I had to redefine that.
mm,
I was like, oh, they're not actually being selfish. They're actually being clear
right.
about like, oh, this is actually my time. Right? Like I actually don't answer phone calls like after 9 p.m. on weekdays. It's not because I'm being selfish, it's not because you're not important to me. It's like this is what I do for
Mhm,
myself. That just changing that definition for me helped me understand, oh, okay. So that's not what selfish is, because like I said before, there was nothing worse than being selfish. I was like, oh, so then I can do that.
mhm,
Right? Like I can actually put some boundaries in place that say to people like, no, you actually can't call me anytime you want to. And it's so funny because I learned this lesson in business far before I learned it in my life.
mm,
Right? Like I learned in business that I actually was going to be like, I'm not answering emails after a certain time. And like, no, I'm actually not going to be on Slack or Teams on Saturday just because like that's when you're in. Like I knew that about business.
yeah,
It hadn't really penetrated like my actual life, right? Like I was letting people have access to me all the time.
mhm,
And so I had to take that learning and apply it to my life. And so what I've learned, because again, I'm not only am I action oriented, but I'm a data informed person. So now I have the proof points
mhm,
of the fact of like, oh, I didn't answer that phone call. Nothing bad happened. They still like me. They still love me. They still appreciate me. And I can still be there for them, just not at like 11:30 p.m. at night, right? So
yeah,
now I've had enough of those experiences to understand that it is okay, right? But I think it started with me confronting that definition of
mhm,
like what is selfish and what is a boundary,
mhm.
right? And that those are two very different things.
Yeah. And I definitely think something else that we can work to label is which parts of bringing peace to us is fighting off other things
Yeah.
versus fighting something off within ourselves.
Yeah.
So when you're talking, I'm thinking, okay, so what holds me back from being at peace with my life?
Hmm.
And so much of it is my own insecurities
Yep.
about money or my body or my apartment or how busy I am or my
Mhm.
friendships or things like that. And it I think to me, it's almost like those kinds of things is
It's
that's
so
what can
true.
keep me up at night and that's what can disturb my peace is like,
Yeah.
oh, I always think about how when New Year's comes around and everybody's setting goals, everybody wants to save money.
Yep.
Everybody wants to lose weight.
Yep.
Everybody wants to make more time for, for their
Yep.
family.
Hmm.
And it's very funny how universal that is. And I think in reality, sometimes when people are setting these New Year's resolutions or setting goals for a new period of life, they're so based out of insecurities. And one of
Hmm.
my other guests that I had on in December, Marno, she talked about how when she sets those goals, that's not that's not coming from a place of self-love. And when you set a goal to fix something about yourself, that's
Hmm.
not necessarily something that's coming from a place of love of self-love. So when she
Yeah.
sets goals, she tries to do it from a place of self-compassion and a place of self-love.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting. I'd love to know your thoughts around battling insecurities.
Yeah,
I know it's
well,
a big topic, but like,
it is a big topic, but something that you said really made me think, because when you started to when you were talking about the fact that so many people at the start of the new year, there's always a goal in
mhm,
mind around like money, family, and like body. There's
yeah.
usually some mix in there. And one of the things I've learned as a marketer, as a person in business, but also in my professional life, as a mentor to other people, a lot of times there's a conversation happening here, but the real
Mm,
conversation is below.
yeah.
Right. So when people talk about money, what they're usually talking about is freedom.
Mm,
Right. Like I want enough money so that I feel free to do the things that I want to do, or to feel safe in
mhm,
doing the things, right? Like saying I want enough money to like buy a house is a wonderful goal, but I think what people are really saying is I want to have enough financial security to feel safe and secure in the place that I live and reside.
mhm,
When I want to lose weight, that's not always just like I want to like lose 10 or 15 pounds. It's like I want to look in the mirror and like what I see,
mhm,
right? Like, and
yeah.
those are two very different things.
Totally.
And you don't have to lose weight to like
Mhm,
what you see. And so yeah, so I think there's that that's happening, that conversation at the surface level, and then what's happening deeper. But then the other thing to your question about like that insecurity piece. So it's interesting. I had this conversation with someone many, many years ago. I was going through a particularly difficult time at work. I was
mhm,
working in an environment that wasn't really great, and there was just a lot of toxicity and a lot of like politics and like clickiness, and all of those things are literally like death to me. Like I can't. I reject all of that.
yeah.
But one of the things that I remember having this conversation with her about was I was like, I fundamentally believe that if people understand that they come from the concept of love,
Mm,
that everything else about how you're experiencing life changes, right? Like, I have to believe that I am uniquely made
mhm,
in this moment, in this time, that my purpose in my life is not connected to my body, it's not connected to my money, it's
mhm,
not connected to how I show up in the world. Like, I have to really separate those things out. And one of the things I've actually been talking to people about lately is like qualitative value versus quantitative
mm,
value, right? Like, it's not about the tangible numbers of things, the things you buy, the size jeans you wear, the money in your bank account. All of those things are great, right? Like, I never speak against people who want to do quote better in
yeah.
certain areas. But if you attach too much of your value to that,
Mhm,
that's not creating a life that's at peace. You're now a slave to
mhm,
that. And that's something that I went through when I was going through a very intentional time around like getting healthy and losing weight. I have the data to prove that losing weight does not make you happier.
right.
It doesn't.
Yes, yes, you're
It
right.
doesn't. If anything, it reveals more of what you're actually struggling with.
Mhm,
Because a lot of times you're like, I'll just be happier if I lose this weight. And then you lose the weight and you're not happy, and now you're devastated.
mhm,
Because like, now what do I do?
mhm,
Right? Because I attacked the thing
yeah.
I was supposed to attack, and that didn't change anything. I often say this to people that I mentor that are looking for other jobs. They're
Mhm,
like, I hate my job, so I'm going to find another one. And I'm like, sure, but I
mhm,
promise you that you will go into that job and there will be something else.
mhm, you're right. Yeah,
There's
right.
going to be something else. So, this idea of outrunning
Mhm,
something or trying to change that thing is a harder battle to win than doing the hard work of learning how to be at peace when things are not perfect, right? And I say that fully acknowledging that that's really hard to do.
mhm,
It's really hard to love your body when the world is telling you that your body is not the ideal.
yeah.
It's really hard to love your life when you see other people who are able to take fancy vacations and like
Mhm,
buy the bags and the shoes and all of those things. Like, it's not easy to
Hmm.
do. But this is why I always encourage people, and this is what I encourage myself to do, to find the things that bring joy to me,
Hmm.
right? Like if I can find things that bring joy to me, then I start to understand that the feeling is not attached to that other stuff,
Yeah.
right? Like I have found the most peace literally walking by the East River, like, and
Hmm.
just with headphones on, listening to music. It is one of, I can actually, I can smell the
Yeah.
experience when I'm in that. It is far happier to me than any time I've ever walked into like a Chanel and like
Right.
bought a thing. Like they're not even comparable
Hmm.
in all of the things. And so I think that's the first thing. And then one of the other things that I often encourage people to do who are like battling that sense of security in who they are
Hmm.
is that I'm a big believer in being of service to other people. I really believe that when you get out of yourself
Hmm.
and you're at service to other people, it fundamentally shifts the way you start to attribute value to
Mm.
things. Because I was trying to articulate this to someone. I was like, one of the things that I hate about being depressed, and I don't mean that in the clinical term, right? Because
Right.
that's something different. But like if you're feeling depressed or sad, it's such it's such an internal feeling. Like all you can focus on is yourself and how you feel and how you don't have what you want or any of those things. And so I have found the quickest way out of that is to be at service
Mm.
to
Yeah.
other people, right? Like to do something for someone else, not for accolades or thank you, but to get out of yourself.
Yeah.
And that connection, that human connection of doing something, it changes what you value, right? And all of a sudden you realize that when I'm helping people, they don't care how much I weigh. They don't care what I have on. Like
Hmm.
they don't care about any of those things. What they care about is like our humanness came into connection with each other, and you're better because of it, I'm better because of it.
Yeah.
Fundamentally will shift the way you put value on like who you are, how you show up in the world.
Yeah. I think something that you said that I like this word, outrunning. You can't outrun
Hmm.
what you're trying to outrun. You have to deal
Yeah.
with the big stuff. I
Hmm.
love that because, now that I'm 30
Hmm.
and I'm entering I'm in the new decade of my life, I do want to do things a little bit differently, and I want to do things more wholly. And like,
Yep.
I think in my 20s, I think I did a lot of trying to outrun. And back to the losing weight and being happy thing, I think the other thing about that is, for me in my 20s, any weight loss that I did was not in any way anything sustainable.
Right.
And so when I would lose weight, I might get compliments and people would say, "Oh my God, did you lose weight? You look amazing." La la la. And
And you
uh,
get that addictive hit
yeah,
of
and then
like,
you're yeah, and then like you're in this life where now in order to maintain that weight, no way can you be happy be happy.
no.
Like I'm sorry, but like I'm not going to live my life in a way where I have to eat in a way that'll maintain the lowest weight I've ever been. I remember one time I must have been 26 or 27, probably 27, and I was losing weight, and I was eating healthier and exercising more, but like not in a way that was going to last any amount of time beyond the time that I was losing 2 pounds a week.
Right.
And I remember that, you know, um, I just gained the weight back. And like I think
Yeah.
they say about dieting that when you diet and when you lose weight, you're very likely to gain weight and gain more again, like
Hmm.
once you're done dieting or whatever. And I think that in reality, in my 30th year, I have been so intentional about figuring out, like, what do I think about my body? Because my body,
Hmm.
it's so ridiculous that for my entire 20s and teens, and now that I'm 30, that something that nobody cares about
Hmm.
except for
It's
me would let that disturb my peace that much. I mean, it's such a funny
yeah.
thing. And so I've been battling it a little bit, going back and forth. Like, I think I definitely gained weight in the pandemic, as a lot of people did. And,
Yeah.
it just, I work out and I eat and I live my
Well,
life.
Well, but that I think that the thing that you're honing in on
Yeah.
is the important piece. It's like what is it, it goes back to this idea of understanding the inherent value of a thing. Like
Hmm.
my body is not here to be perceived by others.
Yeah.
My body is here to carry my spirit and my soul through this human experience.
Hmm.
That's my definition of my body. That's what my body's here for.
Yeah.
It's housing Brietta. It is not Brietta.
Yeah.
It is the house that Brietta is in. And when I think about it that way, my goal is not for it to look a way that other people can perceive it,
Yeah.
right? In ways that they approve of. Health is about doing the best to honor the vehicle that Brietta is
Yeah.
in, right? Like that's what it's about, which means that, like, yeah, you should take care of yourself and you should exercise and you should eat healthfully,
Yeah.
but it's not about a number or, a certain way of like
Or like a
presenting yourself in
size.
the world.
Yeah.
It's not. And I think the other part of it is, and something that you said, which is like, it's because it's such a selfish practice. Like
Mm.
dieting is such a selfish
Mm.
practice. You cannot really be living life when
Yeah.
you are that focused on what you can eat, what you can't eat. I think anyone who's ever experienced any sort of like dieting or disordered eating will tell you that it immediately rips you out of connection with other people.
Connection.
Immediately.
Yeah.
Like you cannot really connect with people when you are so worried about like, if what if they say we're going to go to dinner? I can't eat that. I mean, I was really like, I've been open about the fact that I've struggled with disordered eating in my past. Like I was a person that counted every calorie.
Yeah.
I was a person that highly restricted. I lived off of like hundreds of calories a day for many, many years,
Yeah.
right? Like, and so this idea of maintaining that look, like I loved the dopamine hit of people saying, "Oh my God, you look so good,"
Hmm.
right? I love that dopamine hit, but it was very short lived,
Yeah.
right? Like it did not sustain me.
Hmm.
It did not feel good, and I mean, really, people who are in the throes of it understand that, like, I didn't enjoy family dinners. I didn't
Yeah.
enjoy holidays. Like I ate and felt guilty. Food was a punitive thing,
Mm.
like, and so all of those things were in conflict, which means that, like, there was no way I was experiencing life at peace with myself or feeling peaceful. It was
Hmm.
such a chaotic way to live. And so the thing that I always come back to is, honestly, what helped me is to understand that connection of, once you do all of that, does it really solve
Mm.
what's happening? Because I'm
Yeah.
of the belief, I'm certainly not a dietitian or any of those things, but I'm of the belief that if you are someone who's struggling with food, it's very rarely about food. Like, I
Hmm.
think there are very few people who are just like, you know what, I just eat like crap and like I just need to fix it.
Hmm.
Most people who are struggling with anything food related aren't at peace with the thing that's happening inside of them, right?
Yeah.
Like it's their way of managing stress, it's their way of like zoning out, like it's their way of feeling good,
Yeah.
right? Like connecting the dopamine of like I I I remember telling someone back when I was really focusing on healing my relationship with food. I was like, I remember as a little girl when my mom would pick me up from daycare, one of the things that we would always do is go get a strawberry ice cream cone. We did it. It was like our thing. It was my favorite thing to do, which is like not a surprise that when I'm having a tough day, all I want is an ice cream cone,
Yeah.
right? Like that child inside of me is like, comfort me, nurture me, right? And so I think, going back to what we've been talking about, like, this is why it's so crucial to understand how to create a life that is still enough, sustainable enough
Hmm.
that the ebbs and flows that come with life stress don't force you into chaos,
Yeah.
right? And I think those are the things that I hope more people will normalize for themselves, right? Like that it's actually okay
Yeah.
for you to say, I'm not going to take on more. I'm going to do less.
Hmm.
Or it's okay to say, like, you know what peace looks like for me? Peace looks like for me that I actually don't need to take a higher paying job. Like peace looks for me like, you know what? Maybe I'll just take something that sustains me, pays my bills, like supports me, and that gives me all of this free time to
Hmm.
like write that book, record that album, start stand up, like do the
Yeah.
thing. Like that's what it's going to look like for me, and to normalize not looking at other people and
Yeah.
saying like, "Oh God, if I do that, I'm not as successful or I'm not as like know yourself enough to know that that's what's going to make you feel as fulfilled and as authentically yourself as possible."
Yeah, I love the word fulfilled too, because
Yeah.
that to me, when I think about peace and I think about like understanding myself and understanding that I'm a performer and that what that
Mhm.
means is that I should be performing and I should be going
Yes.
out and connecting with other performers and that, I should find my joy in performer. And that clarity has led to a lot of fulfillment in my life. And that
So
fulfillment is
true.
what is giving me so much peace. Like when someone says, when I see somebody that I haven't seen in a while and they say, "How are you doing?" I'm like, I'm doing great. Like, and not everything
Yeah.
is easy. Not everything is easy.
Mhm.
Like, I'm dealing with a rent raise situation. I'm just like
Mhm.
going through a lot of different things, family wise and like relationship wise and things like that. But like, I'm fulfilled by how I'm spending my time, and that brings me so much
Yeah,
peace,
because you're in alignment with who you
alignment.
actually.
Hmm.
Yeah, you're aligned with who you actually are, with who you were meant to be. And the beautiful thing is that so much of what we wrestle with
Hmm.
is primarily because we're putting on labels that don't belong on us, right?
Yeah.
Like and one of the things that you said that I think is so important, like, and we talked about this in our last conversation, like, I will never ever remove the part of my how I just my descriptor. I will never remove artist
Right.
and creator. Like I will not, because it is so inherent
Yeah.
to who I am. There's no world in which I am not an artist or a creative. There's no world in which I am not always creating something,
Hmm.
whether that's new music, whether that's writing, whether that's theater, whether that's a documentary, like whatever it is. I
Yeah.
am always in, because it's a part of who I am. And to deny that is to deny a really big piece
Yeah.
of my identity. And so, to your point, that wrestling that we have inside of ourselves, I think this is why so many people run away from stillness. At least that's why I did. Because when you sit still long enough, you start to inevitably ask the question of like, is the way I'm spending my time actually like leading me to who I actually am?
Hmm.
Because if the answer is no, then that's like heartbreaking, right? It's like, oh God, I'm spending all this time, and come to find out, like none of it is really geared towards who I actually am, what I actually want to do in my life. And then especially if you start to put the opinions of other people on top of that, like no wonder so many people are like, I don't feel at a state of peace or
Hmm.
rest or fulfillment, because they've never stopped long enough to ask. And I believe that one of the things that the pandemic did is that it was a forced recalibration that forced a lot of people to say, "Oh, is the life I'm leading actually making me happy?"
Yeah.
Right? Like this is why you saw so many people like moving, changing, like quitting jobs, moving, because people were like, "Oh, well if this is how I have to spend my life, this is not
Hmm.
it." Like this is not it. I don't know what it is, but it's not this,
Yeah.
right? And I think we need to do more of that. I actually think more people need to like spend the time in stillness and say, "Okay, I'm spending 40, 50, 60 hours a week doing this thing. Is this what I really want to do?" If the answer is no, what part of it am I enjoying? If I'm
Yeah.
not enjoying any of it, is it just because I need to get paid? That's cool. Like, I will never knock anyone like working a job to get paid, but then it means, okay, so I need to find other outlets.
Yeah. Right.
or the things I enjoy doing that really bring me joy. So, yeah, I think more people need to like challenge the assumptions of how they're living their life. I think it's a scary practice, but I think it will start the path to lead more people to living a peaceful, more aligned, more joyful life.
Yeah. And I think that's a wonderful place to wrap up. I mean, I think we got
I
so many
love
little
it.
knowledge bombs. I think I learned a lot from you, and I hope our audience learned a lot as well. What do you have? What do you have going on, and where can people follow you, support
What do I
you?
have?
What's going on with
Well, what I
Bryetta?
have going What's going on with me? Well, I'm excited. My I have a book coming really
So cool.
soon that I'm so excited about. It's called Life Lessons, and it's
Mhm.
really about me distilling down the learnings that I've experienced in my life. So that's coming really soon, so people can
Yeah.
follow me on social and hear more about it. And I'm also spending time working on a creative sort of conference that will be coming up in New York in the summer that's going to be geared towards a lot of creatives of color,
Mhm.
and talking about racial and social justice, but doing that through the arts,
Yeah.
etc. So yeah, I have some fun things that I'm feeling really good about.
Where
And
can they
besides that, I'm growing my peas and my potatoes and my tomatoes.
because they bring you peace.
They do. They make me so happy.
And what is your Instagram or social media that you want people to
Yeah.
follow?
Yeah, usually you can find me at It's Brietta.
Yeah.
If you type in It's Brietta, it's usually that on any of the socials.
Cool. Amazing. And if you're not following Brietta yet, you should go follow Brietta. If you're one of Brietta's fans or friends and you're not following me, make sure to follow me at
Yes.
what is my Instagram? Ben Hawes Show,
Yes.
or the podcast at Life in Bold Pod. I'm on Instagram and TikTok. And also, we talked about this last time. You were my first person that I told about this, but my podcast is now on YouTube. And so people can
Yes.
find it and watch it on YouTube. It's actually my favorite place to watch it. The video is also available on Spotify as a video. So I think that's really cool. I love doing the video episodes,
Yeah.
and it's
I
been
love
really
it too.
cool. And Google, I mean,
Yeah.
YouTube is like such a good search platform, so people are finding the podcast, and it's been amazing.
No, I would encourage anyone who's listening the podcast as a result of coming from anything that I'm doing. I would say if you're not following Ben's podcast, I think you should. I mean, I just think it's a lovely collection of human beings coming
Mhm.
together, I think. And I'm a big supporter of what you do, so I'm always thrilled to be a part of it.
I do know that, and you've been so supportive, and I'm a big supporter of you as well. And with that, let's say goodbye to the audience. I hope you all have a great day, an even better week, and do not forget to live your life in bold. Bye.
Bye everyone.
We did it.
We did it.
That was really
Amazing.
good.